So we're looking at the idea of authenticity in groups. The last time I showed you 5 easy ways to spark the beginning of authenticity. The focus was mostly one-on-one relationships. They were simple ways to engage another person so they reflect back beyond the surface level, beyond the superficial responses, and they foster a willingness to go deeper, otherwise known as authentic. So let's broaden this idea out to groups. I want you to know that as a leader, you can interact and create interactions within your group that can move everyone towards the goal of group authenticity. So how does the way I engage one person transform the whole group towards authenticity? That's a great question. So let's talk about some teaching. So first, remember that God created us to be relational, to Him and to others. The two are mutual. They are two parts of the same thing. So far, we've talked about a more one-on-one relationship. So now let's broaden this out to the whole group of people. So first is the idea of transparency through relationships. When others in your group watch you interact transparently with an individual, they are more likely and more willing to trust and be authentic with that person with their own transparency. You see, group dynamics is a fascinating study because being in a group alters the way an individual acts and reacts. In this case, a group will view an individual as trustworthy when they see you as a leader being transparent with them. Transparency with one fosters authenticity for the entire group. So how can you do this as a class leader? At the beginning of class, don't always just stay on the shallow, cliche topics of conversation. Move into more personal ideas. You know what? Be willing to ask them, how is your day? Or how is this part of your life? Or last time you said this, did you think any more about that? Lastly, you can say, how can I help you? How can I help you do what you need to do? Encourage and affirm people publicly in how they changed your life or the direction of the class. Second, spiritual growth through relationships. We need to define the process of spiritual growth. Growth occurs when we respond with faith to any truth God brings. But here's the thing. God often has to first expose the lies we believed and acted upon, and then He has to expose the sin, but then in forgiveness and grace, He then touches His truth with our exposed heart. But what happens when that occurs in class? If you wanted to share what God showed you, you can't just tell the good stuff. You need to tell the whole story, because that is where God's glory is proclaimed. But we don't want to share the bad stuff. And this means for many, God's truth stays hidden, or worse, only half the story is told, which is inauthenticity. But imagine your class being a place where we grow from class discovery. We will lean forward and say to the group, this is what God taught me when you made your point. Here's what I believed, that's the sin part. And here's what I see now, that's the restoration part. And here's what I'm going to do or think about from here on out, which is the repentance part. This leads to another idea. And it's actually a third and fourth part of the conversation. But this video is already getting a little long. So you know what? I'll make another one and we'll talk about those last two next time. I love what you're doing, and I'll see you then.